Good morning, listeners, and in case we don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. You're listening to CinemaTalk, the official podcast for RuleThirds.com. Today, we're talking about based on a true story and how utterly useless that phrase may be. So, let's get things going. My name is Max.
And my name is Larry.
And I'm Sean.
Whoa!
What?
Whoa!
Yeah.
You're back?
Look at that, he's
Yes.
alive.
Wow. Well,
Cool.
I would think you'd want to bring this up, Sean, you know? Maybe
you
stroll in and say,
surprise us.
hey guys, I'm back, instead of just popping on the podcast.
Seriously,
Jeez.
Sean, you scared me to death. God.
Yeah. I mean, more so than usual. Yeah, that was too easy.
Don't know how
All
that
right,
joke
guys.
played out.
Guys, fine. Sean, tell us about your travels as we head over to the lobby, please.
Sounds good.
Ourselves a treat. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Wow. That's a lot of... Geez, Sean, talk about a bunch of stories coming out of L.A. I mean, seriously.
Indeed.
Homeless
it's
people
quite
and
the
crazy
happening
people.
place.
And, yeah, it must be a big place. And it's interesting that I know for a fact that you and I want to both head there as soon as we're out of college. So for such a crazy, crazy town, I mean, we're still dead set on going there, even with all these weird stories coming from people all over the place about how weird LA really is.
Yeah, but at the same time, I stayed in a really nice quiet area that was just a few minutes away from Warner Brothers Studios. And like
Nice.
10-minute drive to the heart of LA. So you can live in a nice quiet place and be in LA. So, Max, you should keep that
So
in
let's
mind.
talk about what's going on the site.
Yes.
So on the site, it's true. You can confirm the rumors. We are going through a bit of a drought, and we have for the past week and a half or so. We still had content up, though. Last Saturday, we got a written review of The Amazing Spider-Man 2, one of the most critically divisive films in recent memory. And we also got a great on Audrey Hepburn. Both of these pieces of content came from Larry. So, Larry, good on you for keeping the content flow going, even with
thank
Sean and
you.
I being very
Thank
busy
you.
with certain things.
Well, you know
job
what?
well done.
You know, as a member of this site, it's my obligation to get the site, keep the site's content up to par. So it was my pleasure.
That's right. And speaking of content on the site and Larry being attentive and whatnot, we also had an update go up.
Yes,
an update
first ever.
on the first ever Rule Thirds written update based on things that are going on. And this is very important. If you listen to us, if you watch our stuff and whatnot, you should definitely check out this update because it gives you a lot of context behind how the site hasn't been functioning. In the years I've been going on the internet and looking at websites and stuff, there are some times where a website with really good content just never gets updated, and I've always wanted to stay away from that should I ever get to an occasion of running a website. And well, here I am. So it's good to keep these updates going. And the fact is, a lot is changing at Rule Thirds. A lot is changing for the better. And just know that as we continue going forth into the blockbuster season, with 2 reviews back to back on different Saturdays coming up at the end of the month. Doesn't that sound just wonderful, guys?
Indeed, it does.
Yeah.
I am very much so looking forward to those reviews.
Yeah, we've also got a pitch going for a certain video-based website that perhaps you may have heard of that we may not mention, and you can go find out what that website is in the update.
Dun, dun, dun.
And we've also got a certain piece
Smooth.
of content, a series of content, you could say a show, coming from one of us that is brand new and something we may not have ever seen before on this website.
Dun, dun, dun.
Who's it from? You're going to have to
Suspense.
read the update to find out.
Max.
Thanks, Sean. But anyway, gentlemen, how are you? Quickly,
I'm
how
good.
are you?
I'm much better now after Sean has completely ruined your immersion there.
Spoiler, Sean, I'm trying to be like J.J. Abrams, Sean. I'm trying to keep things a secret.
Yeah.
You just keep ruining it. What are you, the editor for the Amazing Spider-Man 2 trailer?
Oh,
Yeah, that did actually spoil a lot.
And did you know the guy got fired for that trailer? He got fired because he gave too much away.
Well, that's why you check the trailer before posting it too.
Yeah, that is true as well.
As
Anyway,
somebody who saw
Sean,
the movie, I'm just putting in a note for somebody who saw the movie. That trailer is really revealing. Like you think oh yeah, it's pretty revealing about the future of but no, it's pathetically, embarrassingly,
Ugh.
spoilery. So
And that always grinds my gears. But
Yeah.
Sean, so you went to L.A. And you stumbled upon, you told me in these exact words, you stumbled upon a premiere of a movie.
Yeah, so it was just my dad and I were walking down a big street in Hollywood. I can't remember the name. It's with all the stars on it. We were looking at the stars, You have to do that if you're in Hollywood.
Yeah, you were looking at the stars.
The Hard Rock Cafe for dinner, a classic thing to do. And part of the road is blocked off. There's gates there. We have no idea what's going on, so we keep walking. We look in, and sure enough, it's the world premiere of Disney's $1 Million Arm, starring John Hamm. Unfortunately, it was really early. No one was there. We did not see John Hamm. Alas, maybe next time. But yeah, we stumbled across a world premiere, and what's funny is $1 Million Arm is based on a true story.
At least that's what we're told.
Yeah, so, Max.
So let's talk about this. You see, Sean, I had a run-in with the based on a true story thing in the form of one of my favorite movies from last year, Saving Mr. Banks. I watched it the other night, and I decided I love the movie. I think it's a great movie, and I think there's a lot to dissect from it. But something that's always gotten me a little bit interested is the life of P.L. Travers. If you don't know, and a lot of people actually don't know the plot of Saving Mr. Banks because its title is not, it doesn't really reference anything like having to do with the big subject material. It's about the constant efforts from, it chronicles the 2-week period that P.L. Travers, the author of Mary Poppins, when she stayed in Los Angeles at the Disney Studios, trying to get things rolling for a Mary Poppins movie. And these were based on a series of tapes that she insisted to be recorded during the sessions in which she was working with the writers and musicians, song choreographers, whatever.
Songwriters. Songwriters.
So I looked up P.L. Travers, and there's a lot in the movie that was left out, and a lot of people have also know this and have brought this up to me. In fact, I was talking to a good friend of mine. She's pretty much Sean if you were a female. Pretty much. She and I argue about movies all the freaking time, and she is very as she told me herself, she likes to harshly criticize movies, which. But
hey, if a movie deserves to be harshly criticized, it's got to be criticized.
So what she was talking about was that Travers had a lot more behind her than just what the movie showed. She was apparently openly bisexual, had adopted a son at the age of 40, and had gone through a lot of and the ending of the film, which I'm not really going to spoil, even though the trailer spoils it.
Yeah,
does it?
Yeah. Yeah, the trailer does spoil the big reveal at the end of the movie. So don't watch the trailer for Saving Mr. Banks if you haven't.
Yeah, seriously, people got to get on these trailers spoiling movies.
Yeah, Jesus. Seriously. We should talk. That seems like a good topic for.
I swear to God, if the trailer for Godzilla is really a spoiler, I will be so pissed because I've watched that trailer multiple times.
So it seems to kind of be setting up some things, but I think the Godzilla trailers have actually been really good about hiding stuff.
Yeah, they've been awesome.
Yeah.
And it's been a really good series in general.
Okay.
But that's not what we're talking about.
Yeah, we're not talking about Godzilla. We'll be talking about Godzilla in a few weeks, no worries. Yes. So what the end reveal was the exact opposite of how the end of the actual story played out. So as I've detailed, it's a very different story from what Saving Mr. Banks told, and this is open to a lot of criticism. And even though it's not really that publicized that it was based on a true story, I mean, I only saw the based on an untold story on the untold true story in the trailer, and not really anywhere on the DVD or anything. It was still a point of criticism for a lot of people, considering how much more interesting Travers was outside of the film. But then that got me wondering, what is the point of based on a true story, guys? Help me out here. What is the point of based on a true story? To put that in there.
Honestly, I think it's used as a marketing thing. Because it's kind of like, based on a true story, whoa, it's real.
Whoa.
I mean, yeah, that's kind of like the first impression. Like, I mean, a lot of based on true stories can kind of get that response from me, at least. Captain Phillips. It's like, oh wow,
yeah.
Based on a true story. And I've heard that one's actually pretty close. Like, as far as film,
except that I hear Captain Phillips was actually a jerk.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. Captain Phillips actually, those crew members thought he was a dick.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
Hey, again, the story being accurate doesn't mean the characters have to be accurate.
True. True.
That's true.
Exactly.
That's not, yeah.
Which is another asset. Another, like, aspect. There's the word. Another aspect of that. Like, does that factor in? Do you want the people to be the same? Like, Social Network, I'm sure we were going to bring up, but
yeah, the Social Network.
Apparently, that's not like what Mark Zuckerberg is.
Oh God, Mark Zuckerberg was like, I mean, he was like, no, like other founders, they were like, no, this is not accurate. And the thing is, what's funny is just on this based on a true story thing, because the film was used the headline based on a true story. The Monday or Tuesday after the movie's release, the Social Network's release, Mark Zuckerberg made a huge donation to a charity, like a huge donation to make sure how awesome he is, because the movie makes him look like a dick. And you see, the thing is, going back to Saving Mr. Banks real quick, these details, these interesting details that outline Travers' life and whatnot, it got me wondering. Is the purpose of based on a true story to incorporate aspects of the actual true story and leave out the parts that don't fit? After all, we are talking about a narrative. We're not talking about life. Life is not narrative. I think we can all agree that life is not narrative. And as a result, I think it's best to try to take out the certain parts of a story that won't work in conjunction with the film. Now, that makes the whole based on a true story thing kind of meaningless until you realize it's called based on a true story, not the true story.
So really, is it a problem of the movie itself saying based on a true story? Is it a problem with the people writing it? Or is it a problem of people saying, oh, based on a true story, oh, it must be 100% factual?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of a few. Larry, what's your take on this?
Well, I want to go back to Saving Mr. Banks for a second. I saw the movie also. It wasn't one of my favorites. I think I kind of set the movie standards for myself a little high, and I guess that was kind of my downfall. But I did like the movie. I thought it was well made. But I want to kind of address your point. Saving Mr. Banks, the story focuses on the relationship between P.L. Travers and Walt Disney. So it's understandable why these aspects of P.L. Travers, like her bisexuality and her son, were not included.
Because that's not what this film is about.
Exactly. That being said, the beauty of film is that it is a story told by somebody else that doesn't have to stick to the realms of reality. Thus, it's easy for something to say based on a true story and then completely dramatize everything, because that's more interesting to the viewer. I mean, you're not going to, like a movie like The Social Network, you're not going to market that movie as the complete true story, because if they want the true story, they can just look up a Mark Zuckerberg memoir. There's a book
the
that
thing
I saw
is,
about it too.
With the Social Network, it wasn't like marketed completely as based on a true story, but it was implied because it was based on a book called The Accidental Billionaires, which was supposed to be like the true story of how the website was founded. So again, it goes back to, are we supposed to trust this? Now, for me, Saving Mr. Banks and The Social Network have both completely destroyed the based on a true story thing for me in the first place. It shouldn't matter. To me, it shouldn't matter how accurate the story is to the real life events. Just like in a comic book movie, I don't care how accurate the events of the movie are to the comic book. It's a story. A film is a film. It's not, it's not supposed to be connected to other pieces of entertainment or reality.
Exactly.
So So to fault Saving Mr. Banks for not being accurate enough to P.L. Travers just seems unfair, because the film is clearly not trying to do that, unless it's saying this is completely true in every single way.
Now, but then we also have to consider the other side. Is it fair to her?
Is it fair to Travers?
Probably not.
That's a good
not
question.
Really at all.
So is it the movie's obligation to do that?
Honestly, I think what the movie got across about her was that she was very protective of Mary Poppins' rights. And as you saw in the credits, if you stayed through a good portion of the credits of Saving Mr. Banks, these were based on tapes, and a lot of them had a lot of them were heavily used in the film. And I think that aspect, that creative process aspect, did honor her legacy. Leaving other stuff out, perhaps not. But again, the film is not about her life. If somebody decides to go make a film about P.L. Travers' entire life, I hope to see all these aspects, like her adopting the son and her bisexuality and all these things, being highlighted and as a part of her life. This is not a biopic. This is a dramedy set.
Right.
This is a dramedy, a historical fictional dramedy.
Okay, then we get stuff like The Social Network. This is someone who is alive. This is actually a lot of people who are alive. I mean, it's not just Zuckerberg who's kind of upset.
Eduardo Severin and all those guys, and the Winklevi and all those guys.
Yeah. So is it fair to them? Again, Mark Zuckerberg did this huge donation. He felt like he had to maintain his name,
even if he knew.
I don't blame him. I don't blame him, honestly, because this movie was popular, and people will get the wrong idea. Now, I don't think the character was completely unlikable. At least in my interpretation, he wasn't completely irredeemable and unlikable, Mark Zuckerberg in the film. But I get that he didn't want to be everyone to think that's what he's like. And then you get big stories like The Fifth Estate, based on true
Oh,
events,
boy.
where Julian Assange went out of his way to write a letter to Benedict Cumberbatch saying, what you're doing is immoral. This film is immoral. You know, your involvement is wrong.
I remember this story. It was,
Now, I think that's
a
a
big
bit
thing.
of a harsh reaction, but at the same time, it is bigger. This isn't just the representation of a person. This is a whole movement, and a lot of people are implicated in the film's portrayal of Justice Julian Assange. So it's weird. Like, I feel like for something like The Fifth Estate, I felt like, you know, they should have tried to make it. Like, I talked about it on Recommendation Domination, one of the first ones, when this movie showed promise. You know, not... Of course, it wasn't received well critically or by the audience, but I recommend it because I think it showed promise. But I said it has to be neutral. And I think it does matter to be factual and accurate in some scenarios, like The Fifth Estate. This is a very prevalent current issue. You know, it's a big deal, the whole WikiLeaks thing, and national security, and, you know, how much the public should know about the government. Like, that's a really big topic. And so if you're not accurate about it, it's not being fair to us, the audience.
You're feeding misinformation.
Right. So
But
where's
are we
the
all-
line?
Yeah, well, are we also? But is Disney also feeding misinformation?
Exactly. But
regarding
at the
like,
same time,
the story of
who's
Saving
being
Mr.
hurt
Banks?
by that? Who's being hurt by thinking, oh, she loved the film?
Oh yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, the big thing at the end of the Saving Mr. Banks that was different from real life is that she really enjoyed the film. When in
Right.
reality, she freaking hated that crap. Holy
Right.
jeez,
Oh,
she
yeah.
just hated
Who's
it.
being hurt by that? Really, just like her opinion, and like, I mean, that's very small. So, would you guys think that there is a line? Do you think it's different for each person? Like, I think for me, it's just kind of varies per film how much I can take.
Yeah.
Because I think The Fifth Estate, it is irresponsible to have, like, especially because it's not just some random indie film. It got Cumberbatch. It had a nationwide release. If you're a big movie like this and it had press behind it, ended up bombing at box office. I don't know why. I can never tell with some movies. But it had ads and stuff. Like, it was trying to be a big deal. I feel like if you're in that position, you got to be fair. You know, you have to be factual. But then stuff like Saving Mr. Banks, I don't think it's harming anyone. It's not doing anything bad.
Now, with Saving Mr. Banks, I'd like to look on the other side of the film. I'm not talking about Travers. I want to talk about Disney.
Okay.
And Disney is a huge part of why a lot of people think Saving Mr. Banks is just nothing but a dramatization and doesn't even have, like, even the hint of historical accuracy. Now, I'm actually looking into this a lot recently, but Walt Disney is not a very well-liked man these days. I mean,
Yes.
yeah, and this is as a result of certain cultural norms back in the 40s, 50s, and in this case, in 60s, that stuck with pretty much everyone, and people these days can't accept that, especially with a figure like Walt Disney. You see, there's a story that goes, while he was working on, while he, like, one of the first things Walt Disney ever said to Travers when she got to L.A. Oh, by the way, just to give context, Disney had been working about 20 years to get the rights to Mary Poppins movie.
Wow.
And this is like the apex of that. The movie's the apex of that. So he goes and he says to her, well, he tells her that he doesn't believe that a woman should be in the writing process. She should be an editor, secretary, all these things, all these sexist remarks.
Walt.
Yeah.
Walt.
The thing is, though, and of course, you know, and of course the alleged anti-Semitism that he might have. Yeah. The thing is, not only are we talking about a Disney movie, we're talking about a Disney movie about Disney. Well, halfway about Disney. And even though the film does make him look like this charming man who just wants to make a good movie or whatever, it does present an interesting dilemma of of historical accuracy when in conjunction with people. Like, it's this relationship between Walt Disney and P.L. Travers did not end well. In fact, there's a scene in the film where she gets really angry about a sequence with animated penguins, and as opposed to her just leaving, Walt Disney was just like, he said, and I quote, "The ship has sailed, Pam. The ship has sailed." And that basically meant, I'm not going to listen to you anymore. So with historical accuracy, especially in regards to people like Walt Disney, who were discovered to have certain less than pleasant things about them, trying to cover that up, is that sort of like something we covered a few episodes ago in regards to propaganda?
Kind of, sure. Yeah, propaganda is twisting facts to make your own, like, claim on it, I guess. Like, it's your own angle, and it can be really extreme, and it can be really minute. Like, we talked about, I mean, Casablanca is propaganda, definitely. But then you have the super extreme examples of propaganda films as well. So yeah, I feel like you can. Like, I think The Fifth Estate, a lot of people were calling propaganda. Now, I didn't see it, so I can't say what I think, but a lot of people were calling it propaganda because it was inaccurate to the real story. And because it was skewed, it was clearly skewed with the director doing the skewing. You know, like, he was deciding what was in, what was out, what was changed. And so that adds a bias. That makes it propaganda. So, yeah, I think they do go hand in hand. I'm glad you brought that up. I hadn't really thought about it.
Yeah, see, I'm actually, again, I'm doing a lot of research on Walt Disney's, like, you know, ongoing reputation right now, and I found that perhaps, I mean, I believed from the beginning that Disney is not ready to do a completely true and honest film about Walt Disney.
It's kind of a conflict of interest, isn't it? Like, Disney Pictures presents the Walt Disney movie. It's like, I'm not going to buy it 100%, guys. Like, I'll watch it, but, and I love Tom Hanks.
I'll be very suspicious. Larry, what's your take on this?
Is it fair to say that I don't think there's a line? I don't think there's a line.
A line between what?
Well, like what Sean said, you know?
There's not a line. Okay, explain that.
I don't really feel... I mean, okay, I take back what I said. There's a line, but I don't think for most situations it's relevant or it should be strictly adhered to.
Sure.
The thing about film is that it is, as we said, narrative. If a filmmaker wants to take a real life story and portray his opinion of it through film and how he personally feels like it was portrayed, I don't really have a problem with that.
Yeah, me neither.
I mean, like Saving Mr. Banks, for example. Not every scene in Saving Mr. Banks is, you know, having Tom Hanks as this pimpy old cheery guy who loves everybody. You know, there's a scene where he's smoking outside, like on public property.
Yeah,
and apparently there was this controversy around Walt Disney and his smoking habit, especially like in public.
You know, Larry. Actually, in the film, I'm starting to get this theory that perhaps the film is kind of a reaction of the Disney Corporation to Walt Disney's dwindling reputation. In fact, there are a few instances. I mean, hopefully I'll be able to speak about this someday in some way, but especially there's a scene in which he's smoking, and then as Travers walks into his office, he's smoking in his office. He goes, "Oh, I can't remember what the line is exactly," but he's like, "Oh, I shouldn't give shouldn't spread the." He basically like he put the smoke away, and he's like, "I don't want to look like I don't want to give the public impression that I'm a smoker." Like he said that, like literally in the film.
Yeah, he did. And, but since we've already spoiled it, by the end, I think now I'm one of the only people who say this, but I don't think that Disney in the end of the film blatantly says that she liked it. She cries,
Okay,
she
I
does,
can get
but
that.
I personally was very confused by the ending the first time I saw that, because I was like, she's crying because she liked it? Did she not? Personally,
it was an emotional connection for her based on the events that partake in the film. I don't want to go too much into the big meat of the film, but yeah.
What I'm saying is, back to my original point, if I think the most important part of film, and Sean and Max have kind of taught me this as we've continued doing this show, the most important part of a film is that it needs to stand up as a film and as its own narrative. And we kind of struck this with the MCU when we were talking about it, how it's kind of correlating this series of events. But one of the reasons those films work so well is because they're so good on their own. And I don't feel that a film can be judged based off narrative. Like for The Social Network, for example, Jesse Eisenberg's performance of Mark Zuckerberg kind of shows him off as an arrogant prick at times for business. But here's the problem. I'm not going to go watch a Social Network movie. I'm not going to go watch a Facebook movie if both guys are like really nice to one another and like everything happens all hunky dory.
Yeah, it's like, weird. When you look at that movie, it doesn't really like anybody who's involved. Any of the players.
Yeah, they're all guilty of something.
They're all dicks.
Exactly. Well, except for Garfield's character. He's kind of the Christish character.
Got the short end of the stick there. He was the most sympathetic. He was the victim, really.
The problem is that films, it is basic storytelling 101. The film needs the good guy versus the bad guy. It doesn't always have to be as clean cut as that, but there has to be...
Okay. let's not go into like film school 101
I know,
here.
Yeah. But
You're not at Film School 101
Yeah.
yet, Larry. Max, in fact, took that last year.
Yeah, in fact,
The-
Larry, just so you know, good versus evil is just one of the many screenwriting archetypes, including man versus nature, man versus himself, and all that stuff.
Man versus machine.
There's man versus man, man versus nature, man versus self, man versus all that stuff.
And of course, man versus Disney.
Yes. Okay.
But as I said, though, I just want to kind of conclude this whole point. I'm kind of wrapping up here.
Okay.
There needs to be conflict and narrative needs, and we can talk. And I think the movie Saving Mr. Banks does a good job of portraying the conflict between P.L. Travers and Walt Disney. Life is conflict, but
sometimes you have to give it that extra push.
right. But sometimes, its film is prone to taking artistic direction, and if a director wants to maybe, write his own way of interpreting a historical situation, as we all interpret them differently, that's fine by me. Even if it's not 100% accurate, I can still get into that.
It's like, somebody could interpret a certain story a certain way and then project it to a bunch of other people. I mean, I've seen that lots of times.
Exactly. Sure. So that
I think Larry is a great quote to go with what you were saying. It was from Alfred Hitchcock, that badass of a man. He once said, "Drama is life without the dull bits," and I think that's very true. And when you go for based on a true story, you kind of have to cut out the dull bits. Again, life is not narrative; it's chaotic, it's entropic, it's not exactly it doesn't function on a 3-act structure.
Right.
And then when we try to go for true stories based on life, sometimes we do have to alter it so it can adhere to our writing and storytelling conventions. That's just a part of it. Now, there's another section of filmmaking that goes heavily into truth.
Let's not get into that right now.
Oh, okay.
Because we've been focusing a ton on Social Network and just ridiculous amounts of Saving Mr. Banks. Seriously, guys. Little heads up there. I haven't seen it. If you're
I'm sorry you haven't been. You've been left out of this.
It's a really good example. This is where the whole conversation sparked from. But I get what you're saying. We should try to bring some other examples.
Yeah,
right.
Sean, give us a film that you want to talk about.
Rush.
Yeah, let's go, Sean.
Rush.
Oh, of course.
Best
Rush.
One of your favorite films of last year, as I recall.
Yes, one of my favorites. I would consider it the best. I saw in 2013. Ron Howard, who was superb, and Chris Hemsworth and Daniel Bruhl. So why I bring that up is because it is, of course, based on a true story. But apparently it is very, very close to accurate. In fact, one of the closest, because Niki Lauda was with the film the entire time. James Hunt died in the... I don't know. But he died a few decades ago. But Niki Lauda is still alive. And he worked with Ron Howard through the screenwriting process, through directing, through everything. He was there to make sure that the characters were at least somewhat accurate and that the events were at least somewhat accurate. So there's even a clip of him at the end of the film. And so what I think is so great about Rush is that it's an example of they didn't have to change much. I don't want to spoil the ending. I talked it with you two, Larry, in private, Max and Larry.
From what I understand, Sean, you're saying that the ending brings out the two traits of the characters very well.
The ending fits so, the arc of each character, their spine, what their character is about, they act on it flawlessly, and that's the resolution of the film, and that's what happened. It all builds up these series of races, and they were neck and neck, points-wise, going through this championship ring, and on the final race, they each acted on their character perfectly, and that is what happened.
It's like
in real life.
It's like this weird idea that people act based on who they are. It's is that weird? I don't know.
I would like to tell a story actually, because it's like you would think, oh well, they're both motivated by their shared goal, so they will act the same. But that's not entirely true. In fact, we read a folk story in one of my film classes, and I would like to tell it because I love it. I've been telling it a lot recently because I just
story
love
time.
It. Yeah, it's story time. So there's a frog and a scorpion on one side of the river, and the river is flowing really fast and rapidly, and the scorpion needs to get across, but can't, because it's a really deep, wide, flowing river. And so he asks the frog, "Can I get a ride across the river on your back?" The frog says, "No, you're just going to sting me when I reach halfway, and I'll sink and drown."
I know this story.
And the scorpion says, of course I wouldn't do that, because then I would drown too. So the frog says, that's a good point. And so they go across the river. The frog agrees. They're going across the river, and when they reach halfway, the scorpion stings the frog. The frog freezes up and starts drowning. And the frog says, "Why did you do it?" The scorpion responds, "It is in my nature." There we go. That was story time with Sean. Hopefully we'll do that again.
Good story.
So sometimes actually that brings it to this based on a true story thing. Sometimes the person's nature you have to change.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like in Saving Mr. Banks, you had to change it. Now Rush, like I brought up, they didn't, and that's why it's so awesome.
Yeah, there are
that it
some
all
stories
fit
out there
together.
that are just ripe for narrative. They
And
just
some you have to
are.
fit a bit.
Yeah, if I can bring
other
up,
ones
if
not so much.
I
So
wanted
also
to
wanna-
bring up an example, actually,
okay.
because I just thought of it right now, actually, because you were talking about it's in their nature. When I was doing research for my episode on Charlie Chaplin of the Greats, I watched, I forgot his Attenborough, the director. I forgot his first name, but the guy, he made a Chaplin biopic entitled Chaplin.
With Robert Downey Jr.?
Exactly, with Robert
Nice.
Downey Jr. And I was watching it, and I had done research on Charlie Chaplin, and this guy, Charlie Chaplin, was not a perfect soul, and
Right.
he was a very controversial figure. He had 3 wives, and he lost most of those wives out of overworking on his films and spending a lot of time on his films to near perfectionist detail.
Yeah.
And he was a very controversial figure just in the decisions he made. He was known to be arrogant. He was known to be someone who needed to take creative control. And so when I was watching the biopic, I was waiting, all right, how are they going to do this? And the brilliant thing about that movie is that it doesn't paint him in one color. It kind of shows his difference and shows his nature, as you said. It shows that he does all of these things, yet he still keeps his composure. And I found that very interesting because that movie didn't use the based on a true story tagline.
No, it did not.
It did not.
Yeah,
but
because I've seen that around.
right, but I feel it's still, and think about it, it kind of gave itself an opportunity. If you Max bringing up the point it's useless, an interesting idea about that tagline is that if you use based on a true story tagline, you're asking for people
Yep.
to immediately go like, oh,
It's
does
a
it go
death
100%
sentence.
does it go 100% into all the details of the story? Is it accurate? When you don't use that phrase, it gives you directorial control to portray the story in the way you feel it needs to be portrayed. And I
Yeah.
feel that's why Chaplin succeeds so well at portraying his life.
All right, so
can I
may
really quickly bring up, just because it's something Larry and I will disagree on, so I wanted to bring it up.
Oh, yay, here we go.
Yeah, I think, Larry, you know what I'm talking about. It's a film that says based on a true story that was kind of praised for being accurate as far as I understand it. And I think suffered because of that. And that is 12 Years a Slave.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, I like 12 Years a Slave. Don't get me wrong; it's a very good film. I'm not upset it won Best Picture. It's fine. I don't want to offend anyone by thinking I don't like that movie. But can we do spoilers? Can we just do a spoiler warning for it?
put
go
up a
ahead.
spoiler warning, Larry. Put it up.
Okay,
damn
well,
it.
if people just be listening, but yeah, okay, spoiler for 12 Years a Slave. Again, it's based on fact, so you can kind of look up how it ends, but whatever. In the end, he gets home. It wasn't really him. He asks Brad Pitt, and
Yeah.
Brad Pitt says yes, and that's how it happens. Like, it's 12 years he's trying to get home, and he's going through all these terrible, terrible things, and it just kind of felt unearned. Now, as soon as I thought that's unearned, I was like, well, that's a terrible thing to say. This is a real human being that definitely deserved to get free and go back home. But what I mean is, like, narratively wise, it didn't feel justified. Like, it wasn't based on character. It wasn't based on anything. Brad Pitt just showed up out of nowhere. We had never seen Brad Pitt before. Oh, and by the way, I will never call him by a character's name. I think that casting was awful. I never saw
character
anyone
is
but Brad Pitt.
Every Brad Pitt character is Brad Pitt.
I would disagree, but in this movie,
Well,
it was just,
not
it was
every,
Brad Pitt.
but a lot of them. But a lot
It
of
was
the
Brad
recent
Pitt.
ones.
So anyway,
Yeah.
he just showed up and got him out. Like, it just...
I agree with you. When you made that point back in our discussion, at first I was like, so much of a nitpick. But then I thought about it and I discussed it with my father, who I saw the film with, and we kind of agreed that's actually a very good point.
Yeah, the narrative. And also, it felt like the entire movie. It was all about Solomon's struggle. It was all about his journey and surviving these harsh conditions and his resilience and will to get back home to his family. And that's great. That's inspiring, and an impressive life to live. I have a lot of respect for that man. But when they put it to film, it did feel a bit like just stuff happening. You know, like I didn't feel a central movement. I didn't feel a underlying current pushing along the events, you know?
And narrative is defined as a series of events that are connected.
Right, so as well as each scene was, like, there are some just incredible scenes in 12 Years a Slave. Like, just take them as their own. They are just masterpieces.
Steve McQueen is a genius behind the camera.
Yes, definitely. I think that's why I'm glad it won, because directing, holy cow, amazing directing.
Oh, yeah.
Because there are just scenes that go on forever that it's just them talking, and, like, it doesn't cut to angles. It's just a two-shot of the people interacting. It's so simplistic, it lets the performances shine through. It's wonderfully directed.
That's interesting. I haven't seen 12 Years a Slave, but that's something that Spike Lee does in a lot of his movies, actually. Just a two-shot of people talking and there's no cuts or anything.
Anyway, in conclusion, I would just say, because it's based on a true story, because it was so accurate, the price it paid was, its narrative was weaker than if they had changed the facts a bit. Now, at the same time, this was, according to some, a very brave film. So I could see it would come under a lot of fire if it changed things about this man's life. Because, you know, it's kind of a touchy subject, especially a story as powerful as this. But at the same time, at least from my personal opinion, I would say the film would be stronger if they would have just changed a few things.
Again, that brings up the point that I mentioned before. I feel that the most important part of a film, first and foremost, is narrative.
Yes.
And making sure that the story is a compelling story that drives us through not only that, but also just allows us to immerse ourselves within it. And if you have to maybe, twist history a little bit, I personally don't mind that.
Okay, with that said, I would like to really quickly talk about a movie that I don't know if either of you guys have seen.
Wait a minute.
But
hold up. Okay, sorry. I'm sorry, Max. I keep interrupting you. I'm just on IMDb, and its list of based on true story films released in 2013, and The Conjuring is on there. And
what?
that reminded me, horror movies pull that crap all the time. It's like based on the true case
The
files.
Conjuring. I remember that.
The Texas okay.
Right,
real quick,
based on a true story. Of
course
there were ghosts haunting the house. Of course, that's factual. It's like, that's so weak. Like, it's supposed to make it scarier. Like, the film opens with based on true events. Like, wait, there are ghosts.
You see,
real quick. Do you guys
yes.
remember Apollo 17?
Oh,
movie
that
Apollo
looked really
17?
lame.
That was so stupid. And they said in the beginning, like they did that stupid thing, like in the beginning, it's like, these events were based on a true story.
Yeah.
You know?
Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to. Just
to bring it up, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre said based on true events, and it was actually just based on the acts of I believe serial killer Ed Gein, who is one of the most famous serial killers today, as he inspired, I believe, both Leatherface and Freddy Krueger. I believe.
Nice.
I may want to look that up though.
You may want to,
sadly. But going back to the original thing, yes, horror movies do that a lot. Going back to
what you were saying.
There's a film that's sort of not in the same light at all, but still deals with certain subject material that's sort of fueled in some way by, I'm talking about Fruitvale Station. And the thing about Fruitvale Station is it takes place in a day. It chronicles the last day of Oscar Grant's life. If you don't know, Oscar Grant was a man who was actually killed by a cop on New Year's Eve of 2008, and it caused a huge uproar. I live in the Bay Area, and I remember this happening. It caused a huge uproar, and this film basically chronicles the last day of his life. Now, it is a dramatization. The only thing that apparently is like concrete and true, and I can guarantee this because they filmed it where it happened, is his death scene. The whole day beforehand is actually a general assessment of his character through action. For example,
which is awesome. I think that's fascinating. I haven't
20
seen the
minutes.
film, but
Okay,
that sounds great.
I don't want to spoil. This is sort of a spoiler. For 20 minutes into the movie, a dog gets run over. A stray dog gets run over,
That's
and
really sad.
we see how he reacts to it and like how he does. And
does he
honestly,
walk over to it, kneel down?
Yeah, kneel
there
down
are
like
two kinds of pain.
Oh God!
Sorry. If anyone doesn't know, that's a House of Cards reference. That's the very first scene of the first episode. It's not really spoiled.
But yeah,
good job.
He brings over the dog, brings over to the thing, and like he calls for help, but then he doesn't do much afterwards. And the film is kind of sort of like that. It does not, I repeat, does not make him out to be like a saint who got killed by this evil cop.
Great,
in fact,
because that'd be a little too black and white for my taste.
Yeah, it would be
I'm
too
not
much
saying
so.
He wasn't. I know nothing about the person, but yeah, if you portrayed it that way, it's going to come across as kind of forced.
But he's like it's shown that he's a flawed man with a good heart, and he is sort of the hero, but he doesn't do anything like heroic. He does things that just show that he has a good heart. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, the guy who killed him it's what's funny is it's just a young police cop who barely has any lines or anything. The other cop who was with the guy who killed him was actually the dick. And it looks like it was generally put as a mistake. Like, it doesn't like point out how, hate crimes still happen or anything. Like, I mean, even though they still are. But what I'm trying to say is the film, it didn't make this like situation out to be some sort of like propaganda stuff. It gave us an assessment of this character, of this man, and brought the tragedy as sort of a part of the overarching, like just the overarching tragedy of it all, like how futile life is sometimes. And I think that was really interesting because it gave us a full day. Like literally, it starts at I think about 12:02 a.m. on that day, and ends around like that night or 12:02. Like it gives us 24 hours. It follows this guy around and just sees what he does. The events that happen are probably not true. The things that happen, probably, like, they didn't probably happen. Like, certain, tropes here and there. Like, I mean, not tropes. Certain story plot points and whatnot. And I think that's really nice because it still gave us a general assessment of him, but, like, still ended the same way in which to tell a really good story. And you should definitely check out Fruitvale Station if you haven't. Anyway.
Fun little side note, actually, about Fruitvale Station. It came up earlier. Lindsay Ellis, the nostalgia chick over on Channel Awesome, which we're applying to, her friends from film school are behind Fruitvale Station. They were involved. So I think that's just kind of a cool tie that she knew the people that made it. So that's kind of cool.
She's actually, like, the guy who made it, he's, like, just out of film school. He's really young. And, So, and Michael B. Jordan is also just starting out. So, anyway, I think that is the best case scenario for it based on a true story. It's based on an event that happened. Like, you cannot deny that it didn't happen. Right. And instead of just like dwindling on that, it creates a great story which to frame a tragedy out of. And I think that might be the best case scenario out of based on a true story, where you can make a great story out of maybe even just one event that happened in real life that can still cause the same emotional reaction.
Yeah.
No, I want to see.
Things to say.
You know what I want to see actually? You know how it says, based on true story on like posters maybe? I want to see somebody actually put this is a dramatization of real events.
You know what's funny is did you guys see American Hustle?
I think Sean bring it up actually.
Yeah,
I love how that film
the beginning of the movie says some of this actually happened, and I love
that's
that.
brilliant.
I think
brilliant.
I don't know if it's a jab at the whole based on true story thing, but like it does.
I think it is.
Yeah, it is just like it's just funny, and it does set a nice tone for the rest of the film.
And
some of this actually happened.
Downhill.
What?
And then the film goes downhill.
Yeah, but like
I'm not a fan of the movie. So.
Yeah, it's I like that too. I thought it was a very nice little like change of pace.
I've been waiting for someone to take a jab at like, this is based on a true story. Well, sort of, kind of, not really, but it's still a story. It's a story.
It's always nice to see when filmmakers do that. But
geez.
So in conclusion, guys, I think we can conclude with this as I stumble to even say a word. Based on a true story is a very risky and very and sort of more trouble than it's worth in terms of marketing and whatnot.
Yeah.
Like how many people are going to go watch $1 Million Arm because it's based on a true story?
Like no one.
Yeah, they're going to go watch it because of John Hamm and because
they're going for the ham.
And it's Disney, it's a safe drama to go see.
Family drama.
Well.
And we don't have many of those. We don't have many family dramas anymore, so it's actually probably going to do very well. I guess my closing comments would be: make sure you're not hurting anyone. Reputation, emotionally, whatever. Like I do think The Social Network. I mean, I think it was controlled. Like again, it's Mark Zuckerberg. He's a billionaire. He can take it. He can take a few hits. He can take if people think a little lesser of him, and then he donates to charity, and it's fine. Like he's fine now.
Yeah, and if it gave him an excuse to give a bunch of money to a charity, I mean that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
because the
pretty
charity
cool.
still gets the money.
But make sure you're not doing anything. Like I do think the Fifth Estate, from what I've heard, at least I haven't seen the film, and I don't know that much about the real life events of Julian Assange and WikiLeaks, but I feel like that's an example of that. You needed to be more responsible. If you're tackling a premise like that, you needed to be more responsible. So that would be my line. Make sure you're not hurting anyone or a movement or anything. And that goes into like documentaries too. Like a lot of documentaries are skewed and really they're incredibly biased and therefore not good to watch.
Always question authority and always question what's told the truth to you and whatnot. And by authority, I don't mean like police or anything. I mean just like the authority that tells you, oh, this happened, because you never know. You never know.
Yeah, just make sure you're not hurting anyone. Then go for it. I don't think Saving Mr. Banks is causing anyone any harm, so I don't care that it takes liberties. I care that the narrative functions. In that case, it's fine. I don't care. And then
Yeah.
stuff like Rush, if you got your lucky opportunity like Rush, where you can do it as pretty much right as it happened and it works thematically, awesome. Or if you get Fruitvale Station, where you kind of get to build your own, awesome. So you got, I mean, you can make it work, but just don't cause any harm. Because
Yeah.
movie's not worth that. I love movies so much, but it's not worth that.
Yeah. Larry,
Yeah.
how would you end this? How would you end this whole discussion?
I'm just gonna bring up another thing that I've been saying. I'm gonna say narrative is the most important thing in a film. You can say a lot of things about, even if the story sucks, the acting can pull it through. I mean, sometimes that I've seen a few movies where it's done that.
Maybe.
In the rare occasions, but really the most prevalent version of that statement is, the acting sucked and the movie looks like crap, but at least the story is interesting.
Yeah.
You need to keep a narrative that is compelling. I want to bring up one more quick example. Jobs, the Steve Jobs biopic
which I
that
enjoyed,
came out last
actually.
year. I liked it. I think the problem, though, is that it painted its character mostly one color, not enough the other, and the narrative sucks. Like, I'm bored. I was so bored of the movie because I'm like, oh wow, this guy's a dick. Let's go watch him being a dick. It's like there was not enough compelling stuff behind it. You know what I mean, Sean?
Yeah, I can see that, definitely.
Right. And
Yeah.
so, narrative is the most important. Even if you have to twist history, I feel the most important thing you have to get with a movie, you have to make a compelling narrative, and you have to put your own touch on it. Without your own touch, there's no reason to make the movie in the first place.
You know what I'd like to see? I'd like to see a movie with a slogan that says based on true story, and based is underlined.
Yeah.
Based on
Maybe
true
that
story.
should be like a new, not a law, but like their rules on, regulations on how to market films.
Yeah, because
Like that would
sometimes
be a solid thing. You have to underline based.
Yeah.
Or like italicize.
Oh
bold.
god. This is the second time I've brought up Fruitvale Station on this podcast, and I feel like I may have accidentally said something that may offend some people. I don't know, but I did not mean to do any of that. I just wanted to talk about how it does paint a picture of a certain character in a certain light, and I think while trying to transition from 12 Years a Slave to Fruitvale Station, we're talking about African Americans who get fucked over by the world, and that sucks.
To put it lightly.
Yeah.
To put it lightly.
So yeah, no offense. Anyway,
And
on
it's
that
funny
train
you
wreck of a
mentioned
note,
Fruitvale Station twice, because remember, I mentioned Game of Thrones every time.
yeah, and you
And
just
actually
damn
haven't
it.
mentioned it, so there we go.
Yeah.
Tune in Sundays at 7 o'clock on HBO. Man, I wish I was sponsored by
This
Game of
episode-
Thrones.
Yeah,
Cinema Talk,
I knew these
sponsored by
last two
Game of
episodes were
Thrones.
missing something.
Yep, it was Game of Thrones. You're welcome.
And by the
Okay.
way, to the filmmaker who is obviously going to do the biopic on RuleThirds.com in 30 years, I expect
would like
a good
to be
narrative.
played by Anne Hathaway.
Even
Max
that
will be
80 years
played
old or
by-
whatever when she's...
Max, you're going to be played by Danny DeVito.
Oh,
And Larry, you will be played
we're all
If he
by...
lives if he lives by then.
I'm just going to go with Patrick Stewart because I like him. You're welcome.
Yeah.
Oh, I
That
get
was just
Danny
my
DeVito.
random
Oh,
casting.
Yeah.
And don't worry, everything in that movie will be
Yeah,
based
right.
on true story, such as I will be a hot-tempered shit. It might be true.
Yeah.
And I will be the man who
Anyway,
keeps you both at
that
bay.
concludes this. I don't want to say analytical, but yeah, it's pretty analytical podcast
Kind of,
of
yeah.
Rule Thirds. Yeah, of CinemaTalk. Just remember to remind you again, there's some stuff going up on the website, but we are about to enter a new age with the summer blockbuster season coming up with our first new review in a new light of Godzilla, one of the biggest movies of the year. Which I'm really excited for. You guys excited for that?
Oh,
Yes,
hell
definitely.
yeah.
I'm excited to
Totally.
see how that new review format goes more than the movie, actually.
Yeah,
So-
kind of. And I'm more excited for the Interstellar trailer
Yeah.
that will debut with
boy.
it. So,
Oh, boy.
And of course, a week after that, we're also going to be doing Days of Future Past, which, ooh boy. But yeah, that's going to be coming up along with a few other things
what
just
other
down the
thing?
pipeline. But yeah, just keep on track. We got a great summer ahead of us, and it's going to be great because you're going to be with us. So, with that said, ladies and gentlemen, it has been a pleasure hosting. My name is Max.
My name's Larry.
and I'm Sean.
Thanks for listening, guys.
And on a final note, as a teaser for the next Cinema Talk, I'm going to make the statement: the books do not matter. Tune in next
Shots
week.
fired.
Those shots will continue to be fired next week.
Bye-bye.
See ya.
Bye.
Ourselves a treat. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.